to ham or GMRS? That is the question. Well, apologies to Hamlet, but for many folks thinking about getting into the two-way radio arena, that is the question. In this video, we'll take a look at the pros and cons of both of these radio services to help you decide what is the best choice for you. Hi, and welcome to the Gadget Talk channel, where we do reviews and how-tos on a variety of electronic gadgets and topics that catch my eye. As always, if you find this video helpful, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. This past year, I've done several reviews on both GMRS and ham radios. It's occurred to me that it might be a good time to do a quick video to help potential new operators decide which of these radio services, as the FCC calls them, is right for them. Let's define the term service. Service is a classification the FCC uses to differentiate between categories of operations. Each has different requirements and different operator privileges. GMRS stands for the General Mobile Radio Service and is covered in Part 95 of the FCC regulations. Hams work under Part 97 of the regulations in a service called the Amateur Radio Service. Another part of my reasoning to do this video is that both GMRS and ham radio license numbers continue to surge. In the GMRS area of the FCC license database, it shows that there are over 136,000 GMRS licenses as of September of 2021. Over 43,000 were added to the total in just the past year. The number of new GMRS radios on the market is also an indicator that this growth is real. When you consider the family nature of a GMRS license, the actual number of folks using GMRS radios is likely at least twice that many. On the ham side of things, amateur licensing has surged also. Despite what some ham curmudgeons say about this or that technology being the death of ham radio, the fact is that since the code requirement for a ham license was dropped in late 2006, ham radio licenses have increased by more than 124,000 to over 779,000 U.S. ham operators as of September 2021. That's a 19% increase. Not too shabby. Now, there are pros and cons to both services, and understanding what you'll be able to do within the constraints of each service is very important when deciding which path to take. Spoiler alert, for many of you, the answer is going to be both. If you haven't seen my GMRS video, I'll link it on the end card to this video. It will have some details that I don't plan to repeat here. First, let's do a brief overview of GMRS in terms of pros and cons. There are several pros to getting a GMRS license. First, GMRS licenses don't require any testing. They're like a fishing license. You simply buy it to make yourself eligible to operate GMRS equipment. The FCC announced several months ago that the fee was decreasing from $70 to $35, but that hasn't happened yet. Don't expect that to occur until sometime in 2022. Next, GMRS licenses cover your family members too. The FCC defines family members broadly, so one license covers mom and dad, brothers and sisters, kids, grandkids, and so on. If you read between the lines, this definition points to what the FCC had in mind for how this radio service was to be used. I use my GMRS radios when I'm out camping. I can give them to family members in my party to keep connected as they explore the campground. They could also be used in a family business that covers a fairly large area, such as a farm or a warehouse or maybe a lumberyard. Non-family members would need their own GMRS licenses, however. Next, GMRS radios are easy to use. GMRS radios are channelized, meaning that there are predefined channels the radio can be set to, and all users must use those channels. Currently, there are 30 GMRS channels, including 8 reserved for repeater use. Again, see my GMRS video if all that sounds like mumbo-jumbo to you. Last in this short list is that GMRS radios are inexpensive and allow for more power than FRS or kitty walkie-talkies. While GMRS radios are in the UHF band and are line-of-sight radios, you can expect 2 to 10 miles of range depending on the local topography. Repeaters will expand that range even more. Here are some cons to getting a GMRS license. First, GMRS radio's authorized power is fairly low. That means it's unlikely your little GMRS handy-talkie will allow communications beyond that 2 to 10 mile range. Next, GMRS radios share the same channels, so that if you're in a busy GMRS radio area, you'll be listening to others' conversations. Next, the lower number of GMRS licensees means that, depending on where you are, there's not a lot of chit-chat on the radio. If socializing with others is your goal, in many places GMRS won't scratch that itch. At the same time, GMRS radio clubs are forming, and other various groups use GMRS radios to stay connected. A good example of this might be a four-wheel drive adventuring club might use GMRS radios to stay connected during an off-road trip. Since licenses only require a fee payment, all members can be on the same channel together. Same with hunters or hikers. Keep these use cases in mind as we now transition to ham radio, or the amateur radio service. The pros to ham radio are many and include the following. First, ham radio, even at the entry-level technician license, has a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do with your radio hobby. While generally restricted to the VHF and UHF bands, there are a lot of different activities a technician class licensee can engage in. These include just talking to others, as with GMRS, but also using satellites to bounce signals back to Earth, and using slow scan TV to transmit pictures. You can bounce signals off the moon, and with digital modes that incorporate using the internet, you can talk with other hams all around the world. Next, you aren't restricted to using specific channels when communicating. Now, agreements exist encouraging hams to use specific types of communication within certain frequency ranges, but hams are free to use any authorized ham band frequency they choose. Next, hams can use radios with much more power than GMRS radios. VHF ham radios can use up to 1,500 watts. Now, hams are encouraged to use the least amount of power required, and obviously you won't be putting 1,500 watts through a little handy-talkie. But with proper antennas and increased power, even simplex VHF operations can cover many miles. Next, the higher level licenses provide broad operator privileges. General and extra class licensees have privileges in the high frequency bands too. That means long-range communications are possible depending on band conditions. By long range, I mean worldwide. Last for this short list, since ham radio has been around since radio itself, there are lots of hams around the world you can try to make contact with. The sheer number of hams means the likelihood of finding someone to speak with is very high. For most hams, chatting with others is called rag chewing and is a big part of their enjoyment of the hobby. There are, of course, cons too. First, you can only talk with other hams. There are some exceptions, but basically ham radio is ham-to-ham communications. This means that unless everyone on your campout or four-wheel drive adventure is a ham, you can't use ham radios the same way you'd use GMRS radios. Next, a ham radio license takes an investment in time and preparation. Beginning several years ago, ham radio tests changed to match the privileges granted by the license. Besides dropping the requirement to use Morse code, license tests for entry-level license covered entry-level understanding. Tests for higher-level licenses added more in-depth knowledge, but they still strive to match the privileges granted by that license. For example, I don't have a lot of formal education in electronics, and I was able to pass the technician class license with a score of 100% after about 40 hours of study using free online aids and a printed study guide. I was clearly overprepared. About a year later, I was able to pass the amateur extra license exam in about the same amount of prep time. Again, using a printed study guide and free online test-taking aids. I was granted general class privileges due to having had a ham license some years ago. Next, there are many options for where you might want to take your interest in the hobby. This is both a pro and a con, since that means that you can spend a considerable amount of money exploring various aspects of amateur radio. You can certainly do well on the cheap side, but you'll find powerful temptations for new gadgets to feed your evolving interests. So let's start to pull this together by making some sense of the things we've discussed so far. First, you need to ask yourself, how do I want to use my radio? If the need is more about group activities with a variety of other folks who are more interested in the activity than in the radio, the choice is clear. GMRS is the way to go. On the other hand, if you're more interested in chatting with others from your patio or home office just for the fun of it, then ham radio will likely be a better choice. As we already discussed, you can certainly do that with GMRS radios, but the huge number of hams all around the nation ups the chance that there will be someone available to chat with whenever you call. When you add in digital voice protocols, you can find folks all around the world. Next, you need to ask yourself if you'll use your radio to support your primary interest or if radio is your primary interest. Again, if your first love is off-roading and you need a radio to communicate with others in your group, GMRS is a clear choice. On the other hand, if you're interested in radio communication and going off-roading to get to some remote spot to set up your radio, and that's your thing, then ham radio is the right choice. Now, you may remember at the start of this video, I said that for many of you, the right choice will be getting both a GMRS license and an amateur radio license. Many of us have a variety of communications needs and hobby interests. In some cases, GMRS is the right tool. In others, it's ham radio. Currently, you can get started in GMRS for about $100 to $150, with $70 of that being the license fee. Likewise, Not counting the preparation time, you can get started in ham radio for about the same amount. As I said earlier, I bring several GMRS radios with me when I go camping for those in my party. For example, my wife can legally use that radio to help me back into my campsite. At the same time, I also have a ham radio and outdoor antenna to seek out others in the area who may want to chat a bit on a nice afternoon from my campsite. I started with my ham license and added GMRS to my toolkit later. You may choose to do the opposite. I hope this little sermon has been helpful to you in making your choice between GMRS and ham radio. Again, for many of you, it's not a choice about which one as it is about which one first. With what you've learned here and a little thought, I'm sure you'll be able to make the best choice for you. Hey, if you found this video helpful, please click the thumbs up button below the video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. Click the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos. Thanks for watching.